What's something that will F you up for life if you experience it just once? 1. Heroin. I haven't touched heroin or painkillers in over 7 years, but I still have regular dreams of banging a fat shot of dope and all of my earthly problems melting away. I find it incredibly sad how the birth of my son couldn't even come close to the high of some good clean dope. Nothing will ever feel that good, and I understand why a good chunk of my friends growing up just ended up dying. Heroin is fucking evil. 2. Nothing in life prepares you for caring for an ailing, dying parent. It is an absolute heartbreaker and mindfuck. I did it and it negatively changed my personality. I see sad more than I see happy now. I am working on it though. I'm sending good vibes and sweet juju to anyone else out there who is doing this. Much love and support to you. 3. When I was 7, I saw a neighborhood kid run his bike into a tall cement retaining wall at high speed and hit his head. He died on the base of that wall. We lived way out in the country and it took forever for help to come. I could hear his mom wailing 3 houses away in the middle of the night. Was over 15 years ago and still haunts me to this day. 4. My mom got murdered in 2006, and it sucked whatever, but what was astronomically worse was dealing with the justice system and sitting through 2 different trials just to have one lead to a non-guilty verdict, and for the other guilty verdicts to be overturned during sentencing due to a failure on the part of my local PD. Totally soul-crushing having to see autopsy photos, hearing family members testify, watching the defense tear apart a dead woman's character, and having to sit in a small room with the potential killer and his family and kids and stuff so crazy. 5. Having to make the choice to turn life support off on your 26-year-old wife. Over 30 years ago, and just thinking about it rips my guts out. I'm so sorry. My wife and I talked about this possibility and a few other horrible but possible things that could happen to either or both of us. We met with an estate lawyer, and among the legal directives, of which there were many, we drew up medical directives and powers of attorney. These directives were instructions to do things like turning off life support for each other under certain conditions. The way, as awful as doing it would be, at least it would be something we directly gave instructions as per our wishes. The idea was that at least it would help the other person not having to make the call alone. It's something I'd encourage new married couples to consider drawing up. 6. My girlfriend just died suddenly 4 days after my birthday, on Christmas Eve, and 2 weeks before our 13th anniversary. I did CPR on her for 8 minutes with blood coming out of her mouth. After the ambulance left, there were trails of her blood to the door. She had an undiagnosed heart condition and went into cardiac arrest after running errands on a normal day. I'm usually a pretty grounded person, but I have not been able to get off the couch since. She was only 31. 7. Finding a dead body. My neighbor committed suicide with a shotgun to the mouth in his truck across the street from where I was living at the time. Considering the close proximity, I never heard a thing. It happened overnight, so I can only assume everyone slept through it somehow. I went to get into my car to go to work that morning, and just happened to notice that something seemed off as I saw the windows of his truck. Unfortunately, I got a little closer and realized what I was looking at 20 years later, and that image has never left my memory. He was a super nice guy. I hope he found peace wherever he ended up. And please, if you are struggling with mental health issues, reach out to someone. In the USA, call or text 988 to reach the suicide hotline. 100% this. My aunt committed suicide. She hung herself in her basement. My ex and I put in a missing persons report because we knew she wasn't okay. Continued to look for her all day. Didn't realize she had a basement in her apartment until my cousin asked if we had looked there. The screams of horror when we opened the door and shined the flashlight inside. Those will never leave me. The feeling of dread, looking at her and realizing it's too late. I still struggle to go into the basement of my own home sometimes. I'm so convinced I'll see her down there. I had never considered until that day that someone has to find you, and whoever does will be messed up for life. 8. Psychosis really fucked me up. I woke up in a psych ward on the 23rd of December 2021 after an extended psychotic episode. I can't remember much of it before waking up. All I remember is when it started, I thought I could hear voices outside my flat talking to me. The next thing I remember is being down at Brighton Beach and freaking out in front of lots of people while lying down flat with my hands completely flat and still on the floor, because I thought every time I moved my hands the sea was moving with them and washing people off the beach and drowning them. I was so scared cause I didn't want anyone to get swept away by the waves. After that I vaguely remember being in a police car, then the next thing I remember is regaining consciousness in the psych ward, although the hallucinations and voices didn't stop completely for another few days after that, where I spent my whole Christmas and New Year stuck there. And as it was a bad time for COVID cases in the UK, I wasn't able to leave the room to speak to anyone. My family couldn't even visit to bring me my phone or anything at all to keep me occupied. All I wanted was to call all my friends and family to let them know I was okay and hear a friendly voice, and I couldn't. I've got to say, finding out you've gone crazy and been out in public doing mad shit that you don't remember is already traumatic enough. But following it up with a week of staring at the walls of a psych ward with nothing to keep you occupied but your own thoughts and the occasional visit from a faceless, surgical masks nurse bringing you food does not help with the trauma. But also I'm obviously so glad that they found me and brought me somewhere safe before I did anything too dangerous. I'm incredibly lucky that I'm alive and that I've made it back to a relatively stable place. Could have been a lot worse. But still, would not recommend the experience to anyone. Still get crazy anxiety from the PTSD. Worst week of my life easily. 9. Being the person sitting there with someone as they take their last breaths and die. Particularly if they've gone into death rattle, which is far worse than what people think. It's beyond awful. Hearing that death rattle or the gasping hiccup was the most traumatizing thing I've had to witness. My mother passed away this past October. She suddenly flatlined and I screamed at the doctor and nurses, 11 nurses, to come over to resurrect her. Doctor ordered the nurses to inject shots of adrenaline and proceeded to do some intensive CPR, 3 rounds of adrenaline and CPR later, but my mom never resurrected from the flatline. I just told the doctor to stop after 3 failed attempts. Doctor and nurses excused themselves and gave me their condolences. My mom was naked with medical sheets covering her from feet to neck. All alone with my mom as I held her hand. Had a feeling she had life in her, but doctors told me she was already medically dead. Knowing she was already medically dead and hearing her gasp for air fucked me up. Dude. My heartfelt condolences. Let's keep our heads up. 10. Being cheated on by someone you trust and love completely. You may move on. You may find someone that's more worthy of your attention and love. But that betrayal will always be a part of you. I had a great GF and she couldn't get over the experience of her husband at the time. Cheated on her with her sister. She was a wreck. 11. Psychologically speaking, infidelity. I've never been the same since. My ex-husband cheated on me like 6 or 7 times, and that's just the times when it was unquestionably cheating. But what was worse than the actual cheating was the fact that he confessed all of it to me over the course of like 7 years. First confession happens in 2013. We work it out. Time passes and he tells me he kissed another woman at the bar. So, cheating. But not like full-on sex. I get pissed but we move on. Then starting in about 2015, he starts just randomly confessing things to me. For the next 2 years he would continue to drop these "I need to tell you something" bombs, because he was suddenly consumed with guilt due to severe anxiety. At that point we had been married 10 years and had 2 kids. The confessions didn't start until my younger was 2 years old, and it was a lot of making out with other women but not having full-on sex. The best was when he tried to frame this as somehow not cheating. And also it was my fault because we didn't have enough sex during the years I was pregnant. Gave birth to 2 children in 17 months, both of whom I breastfed 18 months in tandem. I had PPD. Bad. But I didn't realize it. I also started working full-time for basically the first time ever when my second baby was only 8 weeks old. And he punished me for those years for so long. Only to then confess he'd been lying to me and trying to get with other girls since year 1 of our relationship. This shit has fucked me up to the point that I haven't gone to a therapist specifically for it because I don't even know what to tell the therapist I want out of therapy. I'm going to his second wedding later today. His about-to-be wife is the same age I was when I married him. She's wonderful. She's smart and kind, and I couldn't have dreamed of a better stepmom for my kids. And I also think she's making the biggest mistake of her life. I can't believe you're going to the wedding after everything he put you through. I hope you're able to co-parent successfully for the sake of the babies, and find someone who deserves and appreciates you. 12. Killing someone accidentally, like a car accident scenario. On YouTube there's a video of a Chevy Suburban going down a snow-covered highway, and obviously the car filming this has a dash cam. Off in the distance you see traffic coming your way. About that time the Suburban starts to fishtail ever so slightly. As the traffic approaches, the Suburban's fishtailing gets worse and worse until it gets completely sideways and goes into the part of the approaching traffic, and the lead vehicle was an 18-wheeler. It literally hit the Suburban so hard you see it in real time as it was happening. I guarantee there were no identifying pieces left of that Suburban to indicate what it was. The 18-wheeler's fuel tanks explode and goes off-road and comes to a stop. It chokes me up just describing this accident because there is no way anyone in that Suburban survived, and if the trucker survived, he's probably still dealing with that. Friend of mine since we were kids. We're seniors in high school. He's driving down a country road with his little brother. Out of nowhere, the car just swerves into the oncoming lane. At the exact moment, an 18-wheeler is about to pass. Gone in an instant. The truck driver was interviewed by the news. He could hardly even get words out of his mouth. Just said he thought he saw the driver moving towards the radio at the last moment. This was around 2001-02. He said he'd give anything to trade places with them. The reporter asked some kind of a follow-up question, and he couldn't get any new words out. Just repeated that he'd give anything to trade places with those kids. Parents, the two boys were their only kids, sued the trucking company for some kind of negligence or something I can't remember exactly. But the lawsuit dragged on for years and they eventually got divorced in the middle of it. And they lost the suit in the end. The trucker and the trucking company did nothing wrong. This world is just absolutely fucking unforgiving, and my friend probably just wanted to turn the volume up on a song he and his bro were jamming to. Problem is they were on a long curve of this 2-lane country road. They were curving to the right going around 50 miles per hour. I've thought about this a lot. Leaning to his right towards the radio, he was a smaller dude. The hand on the wheel probably corrected for the sensation that he was drifting off-road to his right. Think about going at least 50 down a long country road curving to the right. It seems like it would only take the tiniest, slightest movement leftward on the wheel to send him into the oncoming lane. He probably had no idea it was even happening. I always just pray that his little bro wasn't looking either, and neither of them ever saw it. Nobody screamed. Just the bam of crunching metal and it's over. Their poor parents. I don't know what happened to them after the divorce and lawsuit, and I never had any desire to find out.